I was never taught that trans was in the Torah. However, it would be equally true to say that I was never taught trans wasn't in the Torah. In the spaces where I learned as a child that Torah and Midrash are to be studied seriously, transness was neither acknowledged nor discussed. Within the communities of trans-Jewish people, who draw forth from fundamental texts and traditions, liberatory knowledge, and trans ancestry, there is an element of known and celebrated creativity. These perspectives each recognize the concept of deeper meanings within Judaism, that the plain text is never entire, and actually must be interrogated to be understood. Such an approach to study that seeks to provoke further questions, rather than to resolve existing ones, is resistant to binary thinking, and can be understood as a type of queerness inherent to Judaism. Approaching religious practice and text with this perspective causes definitions to be constantly expanded and redefined, in a very fluid sense. The process of interrogating dichotomies by identifying exceptions results in favoring nuance as a location of holiness and resists simplicity and singularity. It creates a need for continual interpretation. One single person, and even one entire generation, cannot understand the whole Torah, rendering its potential infinite. This in turn means every generation is able to provide an insightful perspective on how the Torah is specifically applicable to the truths of life in their time. If the Torah has infinite potential, levels and layers rich with meaning, part of that potential is trans. In fact, when one looks deeply, one can find stories that describe transition or show characters in between or outside binaries or boundaries, including binaries of sex and gender. These stories were derived from older texts by the ancient rabbis, and their opinions are compiled in the works of rabbinic literature, which includes the Talmud. While the Talmudic rabbis were not working with transliberation in mind, they explore stories and laws in ways that destabilize the assumed progressions of sex and gender. This work can be accessed and applied to more liberatory and nuanced trans understandings of Torah. Part of that effort includes recontextualizing it with queer and trans studies to reveal the potential seated there, then developing it into places of entry for trans Judaism. One ancient midrashic interpretation of the biblical characters Avraham and Sarah identifies them both with the gender tumtum, and then sees God as differentiating them into a man and a woman. These characters are significant for being the first of the Jewish patriarchs, which is a gender non-specific alternative to patriarch or matriarch that I will be using. When first I heard of this midrash, I assumed I could locate the exact point of their transition within the narrative. I further assumed this transition would be found precisely at the point where they had become Jewish. That functioned with a kind of logic, for the rabbis to associate something as important and holy as becoming Jewish with gender transition. Would this not make transition a blessing from God? It would be easy to equate differentiation into Jews with differentiation into two different binary genders. So easy that I believe it is likely part of what the rabbis were working to imply by recording such a midrash. The challenge, of course, was that when Avraham and Sarah's non-Jewish and tumtum identities are equated as representative of some as-yet unrealized potential, both identities are devalued. Interpreted this way, it is not a story in which the first Jews are gender-variant people, but one in which their gender variants must be changed before they can become Jewish. If the midrash that fascinated me was recorded in a way that reinforced tumtum, not to mention non-Jew, as an incomplete or unrealized Jewish man and Jewish woman, could I use it at all? I believed I could, but it would take deeper investigation into tumtum, who the tumtum is and what it means to be tumtum. Tumtum is one of at least 6 different genders present in the literature produced by rabbinic Jews during the first millennium of the Common Era. Tumtum has been used in several significant works by trans-Jewish people, notably the groundbreaking zine Timtum by Micah Bezant, and an area of interest has been how to define this gender and its name. The zine Timtum references a Yiddish language dictionary, which defines the word itself as someone simple, immature, or effeminate. In the Talmud and in contemporary scholarly works on the Talmud, the most consistent idea is that it refers to someone who is hidden or covered and who is uncategorizable as a man or a woman. There are certain debates around whether a tumtum can be uncovered or revealed, sometimes surgically, as a binary gender other than tumtum. Gwen Kessler argues that in laws, tumtumim are sometimes included on the basis of being people who are not definitely man or woman or potentially man or woman. There are debates around whether the tumtum can have children, Max Strassfeld writes of one example where the final opinion is that a tumtum who could have children was not a tumtum after all. All these things seem to create an extremely indefinite and contradictory idea of who the tumtum may be as a person. They may be included in laws on the basis of being contextualized in terms of binary gender, but having distinct relations with other people undoes them. In short, they are existentially opposed to definition, and I think here is where liberation in the tumtum may be found. Instead of seeking to define the tumtum, I am considering tumtum as a person who must not be defined, and who therefore remains a person of infinite potential. They are infinitely queer and infinitely trans, man, woman, both, and neither, all at once. And therefore, describing the first Jewish people as tumtum radically expands who is traditionally Jewish. Being the first of something can be considered to epitomize that thing. If Avraham and Sarah are the first Jewish man and woman, Jews who are not men or women are diverging from tradition and creating something new. And this is a powerful thing for us to do. But if Avraham and Sarah are tumtum, if they are people who represent most directly infinite potential of personhood, then they epitomize everything Jewish people through time may be and will be. They include all of us.